Good morning, Happy New Year, and welcome to the Commission's administrative meeting for January 3rd, 2019. Hopefully everybody had a restful and safe holiday season, so welcome back. Before we get started today with the Commission's business, I have a few personnel announcements to make. I am happy to announce that we have a new Assistant Executive Director of our Technical Division, and that is Philip Vanderhayden. Phil has had many roles at the Commission over his tenure here, starting with the Engineering Division as a distribution engineer. Then he transitioned into Rate Research Division as a part of his work during the establishment of retail choice in the state. For the past 11 years, since 2008, Phil serves as the Director of the Commission's Electricity Division. And during his tenure there, Phil has been involved with a number of issues, including retail choice, rate cases, net metering, and community solar. Prior to that, Phil served in the former Rate Research and Economic Division as both its assistant director and as a regulatory economist. We all know around here that Phil's very experienced and he'll transition easily into his new role. So, Phil, I'd like to congratulate you. Welcome to the new position there. From experienced personnel to brand new arrivals, we have one employee that started just yesterday. Ms. Sandhya Mishra joined the Commission as an auditor in the Accounting Division. Hello, good morning. Ms. Mishra comes from the Maryland Department of Health and has over 7 years of experience in auditing and financial accounting. She is a CPA and has her bachelor's degree and a master's degree in accounting from the University of Mumbai in India. Welcome. And lastly, I'm pleased to introduce a new regulatory economist to our Energy Analysis and Planning Division, Michael Jung. Michael in the back there, hello. Michael received his Bachelor of Arts degrees in economics with a minor in mathematics from St. Mary's College of Maryland. So we have another Seahawk joining us. We had one just start about a month ago. So welcome to our new employees as well. Looking back, our last meeting was a few weeks ago, so I'd like to have a motion to approve the draft minutes from the December 19th, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move that we...
We could have two motions.
I move that we accept the draft minutes from the administrative meeting of December 19th, 2018.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the consent agenda, there is one item, Starion Energy PA, Inc., filed on November 28, 2018, Notice of Material Change, IR 2094.
Thank you. Do Commissioners have any questions regarding this consent item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would have a few questions.
Commissioner Linton. And do we have a representative from Starion with us present today? We do not, but we have Office of People's Counsel. Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. I wanted to find out if staff or perhaps even People's Counsel could answer any one of these questions. First, who was the party that filed the bankruptcy in the bankruptcy court? Was it the Starion company that is licensed to do business in Maryland, or was it the parent company?
The answer to that, Your Honor, is both. The bankruptcy was filed by the parent company, Starion Energy, Inc., as well as Starion Energy PA, Inc., which is the Maryland entity, and a subsidiary, another subsidiary, Starion Energy New York, Inc. All three of those entities filed for Chapter 11 protection as a result of their problems with the Attorney General's office in Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you. Could you, in staff's interpretation, is Starion still required to provide additional updates on this bankruptcy filing here in Maryland?
They're not required by the terms of COMAR. It's our opinion that of Chapter 11 bankruptcy they only needed to give us notice of that bankruptcy, which they did pursuant to COMAR 20.51.03.01. However, the Commission certainly is within its rights to request additional information and updates, and it has been staff's intention to continue making inquiries to analyze how this filing may impact Maryland customers.
Okay, and finally, as you know, the Commission had a investigation into Starion's marketing practices here in Maryland. It was case 9324, which resulted in a fine and also some requirements that the company continue to provide updates to the Commission in the form of biannual reporting. What's the status of those reports?
Perhaps Mr. Mosier could address those.
Good morning, Kevin Mosier on behalf of staff. Those requirements are still in place. Yeah, the company is required to provide the Commission every 6 months with a report on the number of complaints that it received, I think both from OER and internal complaints. Their most recent filing was in September. A little background on that. That was part of the original order. Starion, about a year and a half ago, requested that the Commission discontinue those. The Commission rejected that request, so it remains until the Commission determines it's no longer necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does Office of People's Counsel, we recognize you made a filing on New Year's Eve. Anything to add, Mr. Sheehan?
I just wanted to, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Philip Sheehan on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about Mr. Ostlander's letter that was filed on the 31st, but it was meant to bring to your attention the connection between the bankruptcy filing and the allegations, which are quite severe, that were made in Massachusetts. And
Thank you. We appreciate that. We have Mr. Ostlander's letter, and it speaks for itself. Thank you. Any additional questions? Thank you. Madam Secretary, if we could turn to the administrative agenda.
Do you want to do a motion?
Oh, yeah, should we do a motion? Wow, this was a long break. Commissioner Linton.
Sure, I'd
Thank
be
you.
happy to. In light of the fact that the Commission is still has oversight and has a standard status for the company to continue to report any complaints or other matters pending in front of them, in front of the Commission, I would modify our motion slightly to suggest that we note the filing and require that in the next filing a report due in case 9324 that the company also include an additional update on the status of the bankruptcy court proceeding.
Thank you. Is there a second for Commissioner Linton's motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved. At this time, Madam Secretary, if we could turn to the administrative agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the administrative agenda is Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, filed on November 16, 2018, SUP 449 to PSC Maryland G-9, Standard Gas Service Line Extension Charge. The company proposes to revise certain residential gas service extension charges.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. This is proposed changes to Baltimore Gas and Electric Company's gas service line extension charge tariff. The company proposes to increase the per foot charge from $16.26 to $18.78 for gas line extensions more than 150 feet based on the annual review of charges. By letter order dated November 18th, 2015, the Commission approved the current rate design for BGE's gas service line extensions, under which there is a standard charge for gas service line extensions up to 150 feet and an additional per foot charge for extensions in excess of 150 feet. The company selected 150 feet as the base extension length, as nearly 90% of service line extensions in the prior 3 years were 150 feet or less. The charges are determined based on an economic test using a net present value analysis that compares the discounted revenues of the project to associated costs, and they are subject to annual review to determine if they should be increased or decreased. In the current filing, the company is maintaining the base charge at $0 for residential gas service line extensions up to 100 feet where no main extension is required. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the proposed tariff for filing with an effective date of January 3rd, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Counsel for the utility.
Good morning, Commissioners. Beverly Sikora for BGE. I have no further comments, but I'm here for questions if you have them.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have questions? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wanted to question the level of increase here, because as I look at this, since January of 2017, it's about a 64% increase in this fee. That, to me, seems to outstrip just about any measure of inflation or anything else, and I'm wondering, how can it go up more than 64% in 2 years?
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Happy New Year. Jason Cross on behalf of staff. This is actually more of a reflection, the increase is actually more of a reflection of not so much the underlying costs, like per contractor, but more of the omission, the previous omission of the income tax gross up. Prior to this, the construction in aid of, or the contributions in aid of construction, the CAC, was not recognized as being taxable income. Now this is correcting that.
I understand that. I read that in the buck sheet, but it just still seems to be inordinately high, even when accounting for that and inflationary costs of the contractor costs. That's just an observation I'm making. I'm looking for something more than just kind of setting it off to the accounting change, because 64% is a large increase in 2 years.
Well, I believe that there is, if you look at the confidential attachment, and we won't discuss that currently, but it is actually reflective of the average of the three primary contractors that the company uses. And so, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what changes have occurred within the contracting business. The company may be able to shed more light on that. But it is kind of a confluence of the two, between the average of the underlying costs, which are reflected by the averaging of the contractor prices, and the inclusion of the taxable portion of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this on 1 year increments, it doesn't look like we went up from 1626 to 1876 over the last year. But if you look at it over 2 years, that's eye-popping to me. So, does the company have any commentary on my line of questions and have any additional light to shed on this for the commission?
No, just that, one of the issues, though, is that, these are going out for competitive bids, and, with all the work that's going on in the gas industry right now, these, to some extent, are some of the same pool of people that we're using for, like, stride jobs and things like that. So there has been upward pressure on the prices that are being charged by contractors. But, like Mr. Cross said, the increase for this year is strictly due to the tax gross up. The prior years were strictly just changes in the contractor costs.
All right. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, Commissioner O'Donnell does make a astute observation here. If you just look at the past 2 years, it's gone from 1144 to 1878. Recognize that there have been some cost pressures in the past several years, but that is eye-popping, particularly in view of some of the rate cases, and we're looking over $1 or $2, and here it's $6 and change. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the proposed tariff revisions effective January 3rd, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
The last item on the administrative agenda is Forefront Power LLC, filed on November 7, 2018, request for a waiver of operational deadline in Comar 20620304C.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Annette Garofalo on behalf of Commission staff. Forefront Power is seeking a waiver of the operation deadline established under Comar 20620304C for 3 projects: the Osborne Road Project, the Croom Road Project, both of which are located in the PEPCO service territory, and the Philadelphia Road Project, which is located in the BGE service territory. Applicant requests an extension for all 3 projects until July 31, 2019, as good cause, which is required under Comar 20620104, for the granting of the waiver. Applicant cites various delays in finalizing county zoning permits, which have shifted construction to the upcoming winter months, during which construction delays are anticipated due to inclement weather. Forefront is currently using the 6-month extension allowed under Comar 20-620304C1. Relying on the information in applicant's November 6, 2018 letter, staff noted that Forefront anticipated final approval of all permits needed for the 3 projects by the end of November 2018. I had an opportunity to speak with Forefront's attorney, and apparently that has not worked out as anticipated, so the final approval is not has not yet been received. Although Forefront notes it intends to begin construction as soon as possible, that no longer would be this month. Staff had recommended a June 1 start date, and we retain that that recommendation just because there's so many projects and so little time. But I think that that you can get further answers on the status of this project from the Forefront's attorney.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo. Counsel for Forefront.
Yeah, good morning. This is Eric Wallace with Green Herlocker here for Forefront Power. Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, and Happy New Year. We are here. This extension request is for Forefront's 3 remaining projects. They've come in for previous extension requests. In this request, the delays sort of arose at the end of the zoning and permitting process. So where in the past we'd come in because we'd had some solar moratorium in Caroline County, and in the case of the Snow Hill project, there was a zoning approval process delay right in the middle of that process. They were ready to start construction. They're waiting on their final permits, and they've been waiting now. They were hoping to begin construction by the end of the year, really at some point in November after we filed this extension request. As of beginning this week, we had a phone call. They've continued working with the county to finalize those permits. They expect to have the rough grade permits in hand by the end of the month and begin moving earth. As staff mentioned, and as we explained in our letter, there are some concerns about inclement weather, doing the compaction, the earthwork. If the ground is freezing in late January, February, early March. And as with the previous projects, the construction contract calls for 120 days. So if we were to look at having those permits in hand, beginning the earthwork by the end of the month, then the 120 days would take us right to the beginning of June. And so Forefront continues to request that despite the delays since the initial filing, we think that we can get this done by the end of July. And that would also align with the extension for the Snow Hill Gibbons project that had that zoning approval delay, and would align sort of all 4 of these projects together at the end of July, and would give them the time in case there are any additional permitting delays right here at the end, or if there are any inclement weather delays. It would give a little bit of flexibility to be able to get this done within the requested extension without the need to come back for any further extensions.
Mr. Wallace, did I understand you correctly? You still lack some permits for which of these 3 projects?
So for all 3 of them, but they're all 3 of them are sort of on the same track, and based on the most recent discussions right before the holidays, the company and the county permitting offices are planning to have that finalized within the next few weeks, and so that my understanding is that they're planning to be in construction either at the end of this month or the beginning of February, begin that earthwork. And importantly for these 3 projects, they've already ordered all the panels. They're in local warehouses ready to be installed. They've got all of the racking and construction materials on site nearby, and they've got their contractors on standby. So it's they're ready to go as soon as they possibly can, and it's just trying to get the final sign-off from the county on those permits.
Thank you. Do commissioners have questions? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Most of the explanations about winter construction delays to this point that I've heard have dealt with trenching. But you mentioned something different. And I thought that trenching and drilling holes to put in footers and mounting kind of pylons or whatever would be the major construction you got going on in the field bearing cable, collector cable. But you mentioned soil compaction. From what I know about developments over the years, is it's a big pile of dirt that sits for a real long time to compact the soil. Are you actually doing that for these installations in Maryland?
So my understanding, and Commissioner, I added some detail in this request because of your comments in the past, and I went to the company and said, help me understand what these winter weather delays are more specifically, because Commissioner O'Donnell repeatedly asks about this. He has concerns about sort of just people generally coming in and saying, winter delays. And so I tried to add some more color on that in this one. And what they told me about the compaction issue was for laying the wiring, they have compaction standards that, and I'm not an expert on this, but I understand they have some sort of equipment that compacts the soil to a certain compaction standard, and that when the soil's frozen, that's not, they're not able to do that to meet those standards. So that's an issue. Also, the other big one is, as you mentioned, they have to mount the racking. They have to, drill and drill through the frozen soil and get that into the ground. The racking for the panels, and so I think some of the other earthwork may be a challenge. One of the other things that we talked about was I think there may be some safety issues with frozen soil or frozen equipment. So some of those types of issues maybe. I don't know exactly the details of that, but there's an array of different issues that can arise and cause delays during the winter.
Yeah, I enjoyed a 60-plus degree day, as most of us did in Maryland on New Year's Day. So
sure. So we're hopeful
nice.
Certainly we're hopeful that we won't have any significant delays and we can get done ahead of
schedule. If you had the permits in hand, you could be.
Yeah. The plan was to start at the end of November or early December and get all the earthwork done before any significant cold weather hit. So unfortunately, we're just a few weeks behind that now.
Thanks for the additional information. I appreciate it.
Additional questions from commissioners? Commissioner Herman.
Good morning, Mr. Wallace.
Morning.
Mr. Wallace, if the commission were to stick with the staff's recommendation of June 1st, 2019, is Forefront able to make that to be able to finish construction by then, assuming normal winter conditions?
So I think under normal winter conditions, they're expecting some delays at some point within the next couple months. So I think under normal conditions, they would need longer than June 1st. If there aren't any winter delays, then they may be able to finish by June 1st, and they would certainly do their very best to do that. But I think planning for normal conditions, and also with a little bit of uncertainty when exactly they're going to have those permits in hand, given the delays to date in that final permitting process, I think that's the reason to add a little bit of extra time at the end of the 120-day construction process, and so that I think that would justify pushing this to the end of July, which would then also align it with their other project, the Gibbons project.
Do you think that if the commission, again, were to adopt something less than the July 31st, 2019, are you suggesting that, I'm like your assertion that, of course, Forefront will, continue to operate safely, safe construction practices, and that if there were a problem, Forefront could come back to the commission and say, we are 98% done, but we're not going to make June 1st, we need more time. Is that correct?
That's what we would do. Yep. So we do our very best to meet whatever extension the commission were to grant, and then if we weren't able to make it, as soon as we realize that we're not going to make it, and we can come in and tell you how much exactly time we need to finish, then we would make that request at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. So, Mr. Sheehan, do you have any comments to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. After review, the Office of People's Counsel supports the granting of an extension as recommended by staff.
Staff's recommendation of June 1st.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wallace, thank you for your representations. Based on the situation with the county permit still not in hand, and the efforts undertaken by Forefront to have everything ready to go once you have the green light. I would vote to approve the company's request to have an extension to July 31st, 2019. Do other commissioners have any objection to granting Forefront's full request? Commissioner Herman.
Mr. Chairman, we've granted a lot of these time-limited waivers, and in my view, I would, understanding that they don't have the permits in hand, I would perhaps go till June 30th. I think that, I think it's important to maintain, excuse me, I think it's important to maintain these schedules as much as we can, so I think that I'm in favor of giving them perhaps some additional time over what staff has requested, but perhaps not 2 months, maybe just one.
Commissioner Donald.
I would probably be even less inclined to go to June 30th, but as a compromise position, it might be a good position to be in. For me, I've been, as staff counsel, or as company counsel has noted, trying to send the message that these are not given out just because they're asked for all the time, and that's what it feels like to me. So I'd be more inclined to go with the June 30th date than a July 31st date, just because I don't know how many projects haven't come in for an extension at this point. It might be a more appropriate question to ask. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Commissioner Linton, what say you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm comfortable with going to June 30th as a, I won't call it a compromise position, but I think it's a little longer than what we've given for several other projects. We've typically stuck around the June 1st. As I've noted before, this still is a pilot project that we have to produce a report for, and we're still giving a lot of extensions here. So, at some point, we're going to run out of Junes and have to start doing something else. So, I think if the company needs additional time, they certainly can come in. They get a couple of snowstorms or something, and that delays them from moving forward, they can come back and ask for more. I'd be willing to listen if there's more time necessary.
Thank you. The majority has spoken. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission grant a time-limited waiver of COMAR 20.62.03.04C2, extending Forefront Power's operation deadline to June 30th, 2019 for its Osborne Road, Croom Road, and Philadelphia Road projects.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no additional business before the commission this morning, this meeting is adjourned.